Proud privilege here to be invited by your revered university, and I thank the patron, the chancellor, and the chairman of KLE Academy of Higher Education and Research for this national webinar, Dr. Prabhakar Kore, whom I had the pleasant opportunity of being with him and having had several interactions. I am equally proud that Dr. Vivek Savoji has made it possible to invite me to be the keynote address speaker for today's national webinar on aspirational goals with global benchmarks. I also thank Dr. Kotiwale, the registrar, and all the others who have joined this particular webinar, especially from D.Y. Patil University, Dr. Pawar, and all the others. I think it is an important event in the annals of our subcontinent, India, that we have to understand the importance of this National Education Policy 2020. Because as many of us know, the Indian higher education, which is actually projected as the British system of higher education, has got established in India in 1856 through the universities of Madras, University of Calcutta, and the Mumbai University. And the genesis of this system of higher education in India was because of Lord Macaulay, who actually made a historic speech in the British Parliament on the 2nd February 1835. It goes like this. He has said that I have traveled across the length and breadth of the country, India, and I have not seen one person who is a beggar, who is a thief. Such wealth I have seen in this country, such high moral values, people of such caliber, that I do not think we would ever conquer this country. At that time, they were the kind of East India Company. That I do not think we would ever conquer this country unless we break the very backbone of this nation, which is her spiritual and cultural heritage. And therefore, I propose that we replace her old and ancient education system, her culture, for if the Indian think that all that is foreign and English is good and greater than their own, they will lose their self-esteem, their native self-culture, and they will become what we want them, a truly dominated nation. This is how the introductory speech of Lord Macaulay was there, and then the British system of higher education came into the country in India. After that, in the post-independence era, the evolution of educational policy has gone through several stages, of which two of the national policies are very important. One is the National Policy on Education 1968 under Dr. D.S. Kothari, who was then the chairman of the University Grants Commission, which resulted in a constitutional amendment bringing education in the concurrent list of both center and the state. Then came the National Policy on Education in 1986, and further, we have been having the process of this policy development from 2015 onwards. The first version of the report was prepared by Dr. T.S.R. Subramaniam, and then it was referred to Dr. K. Kasturirangan Committee, which actually finalized the report by the 31st May 2019. What is important to understand is that unlike the earlier policies that were developed, there has been enormous consultation process on this particular National Education Policy 2020. In fact, on January 2015 to October 2015, the concept document was there in the Government of India portal, and nearly 2.5 lakh gram panchayats, 6,600 blocks, and 6,000 local bodies and 676 districts have given their opinion and comments up to May 2015. And then the draft policy was prepared. The summary of it was prepared in 22 languages and put on public domain. After that also, there were about 1.5 lakhs feedbacks and suggestions that were come, and after incorporating and devising, there was a dialogue with the MPs of various regions of the country, and the same document, revised document, was placed before the Central Advisory Board on Education, CABE, in a special meeting on 21/9/2019, and the Parliamentary Standing Committee on HRD, Human Resource Development, approved it on the 7th November 2019. So this is the long story of how it gone through the various sectors of the stakeholders and got approved by the Parliamentary Standing Committee, and then it was adopted by the Union Cabinet. And now we have before us the National Education Policy 2020. What I am going to do today is to restrict myself to the higher education area. Because of this voluminous kind of a document that we have, I thought it may be prudent to really go through the higher education area alone. In fact, the document itself has got about 26 chapters, out of which you have about 12 chapters on higher education, 8 chapters on school education, and the remaining 6 of them are on the various other interconnected issues, including how to make it happen. That means the implementation of it. So the vision of this policy is projected as exactly the pillars of this policy as the usual kind of a system in a different format to project access, equity, quality, affordability, and building in accountability along with that. It is also believed that the vision says that the purpose of the education has to be to develop good human beings capable of rational thoughts and action, and then should have compassion, empathy, courage, resilience, scientific temper, creative imagination, and sound ethical mooring and values. It, of course, also concentrates on producing engaged, productive, and contributing citizen as per the Constitution, which envisages it in a pluralistic society. And finally, the vision states that it will build up a global best educational system. Thereby, India will be transformed into a global knowledge superpower. So that is the kind of a visionary approach with which this document has been coming up. And the key principles that are brought in here, I will not be going into the details because we will be looking at it little later too. The main themes are: respect will be given for diversity and local context, so that either regional variation or linguistic variation or economical variation, all that will be looked into, and suitably the curriculum and pedagogy will be developed. By, as I told you, equity and inclusion will be in the center stage. The community participation in the process of education in general and higher education in particular will be there. The whole modernization of the higher education system will be through use of technology. And then it will also bring in emphasizing the understanding of the knowledge that they are supposed to acquire rather than rote learning. The unique capabilities that are innate to a student has to be brought out by providing them opportunities, providing them opportunities for critical thinking and creativity, and the whole process of the policy implementation will be subjected for continuous review. So that is the kind of the precise approach that this policy has been developed. As I told you, the higher education as such has got 12 chapters, and these are the various levels at which this document deals with the programs and processes and other monitoring methodologies. I will just take you through each of them with some salient points only, because there is so much of discussion that can take place in each and every chapter of it. But I think more clarity need to be there, what is being covered in each of the chapters. If you look at the 9th chapter, which is the first chapter under the higher education, it says that the quality universities and colleges are to be looked at with a new and forward-looking vision for the higher education system of India. How this is going to be brought about? This is by means of bringing about large multidisciplinary universities and colleges with at least one in every district. There has to be a multidisciplinary universities which is large enough, and the colleges also should be so with at least about 3,000 students. The undergraduate education has to be multidisciplinary and holistic, and for which facilities and other regulatory provisions have to be brought about. The faculty and institution have to be completely given autonomy, and for which the management structure and the other functionalities are also to be reformed, has been incorporated in the policy. Revamping curriculum, pedagogy, and assessment and student support is yet another aspect which is being looked at as an important area. And reaffirming the integrity of faculty and institutional leadership position is the one which is being concentrated upon. How do you get the best of the faculty and best of the international leaders to take on higher education institution to the global level is the intention of this area. Then we have always been saying that research in India has not been properly and fully supported, and hence establishment of National Research Foundation has been introduced in this policy. And in one more thing to do, if you have to have all these things implemented to the expected level, the governance of higher education institutions are also necessary in an integrated manner, and hence highly qualified independent boards have also been suggested. The regulation has always been critical and criticized in our country because of the regulation being strangulating the process and so on. That is the usual kind of criticism that we always used to give. And hence, to address this, regulation will be light by tight, but by a single regulator for all the higher education, including professional education, which includes medical, legal, technical, agricultural, etc. And what is important is removing the stigma of open schooling, online education, and ODL will bring in increased access, equity, and inclusion, and that is also included in the concept of this particular chapter, which projects overall what is to be achieved. So for doing that, there is a chapter which says how the institutional restructuring and consolidation will take place. As I told you, the higher education institutions will be transformed into large multidisciplinary universities, colleges, and higher education institution clusters and knowledge hubs in rural and other kind of areas, so that you see that an enough density of students and density of teachers are there, wherein in today's parlance, you see colleges with 100 students and lower than that, lesser number of teachers and so on. That will be transformed as the quality higher education institutions, for which the rational institutional architecture will also take place. In one more kind of path-breaking reform is that the existing and the new higher education institutions that are coming up will have to be evolved as either research-intensive universities where there will be more of research and less of teaching. They are called as RUs. And teaching-intensive universities where there will be more of teaching and less of research, they are called TUs. and then autonomous degree granting colleges. How does this process will take place? All of us know that today we have more than 50,000 affiliated colleges across the country, and phasing out of these affiliated colleges is being talked about for several years now. And now there is a scheme wherein these affiliated colleges will be phased out in a period of 15 years by a system of greater autonomy, and hence or the colleges which are provided the graded autonomy will evolve as autonomous degree granting colleges, which may later on become any one type of the universities that is proposed. Again, the accreditation system will also be developed appropriately with the different relevant norms to the three categories of the higher education institutions suggested. Now, coming to this point, that is where our professional education and other technical education come through, wherein if there are only single stream higher education institution, they have to move towards becoming vibrant multidisciplinary institutions or higher education institution clusters. So this is the kind of restructuring that is being proposed. So ultimately, the aim of this particular restructuring, consolidation and others is to achieve the gross enrollment ratio for higher education to be elevated to 50% by 2035 from today's national average of 26.8%. Even though some of the states in India are having a higher GER ratio, but national ratio is 26.8%. That needs to be elevated to 50% as the sole kind of aim in this particular policy. Now, here again, we have to see that is what our Vice Chancellor, Dr. Savoji, has also mentioned. If you have to do the restructuring in letter and spirit and consolidate, the university should have a global definition. The university globally is defined as a multidisciplinary institution of higher learning that offers undergraduate, graduate, and PhD program and engages in high quality teaching and research. So that is the universal definition. So here again, this reform states that the present complex nomenclature in the country, like deemed to be university, affiliating university, or affiliating technical university, university, unitary, central, state, all these things will be replaced by a singular word, university, which is a path-breaking reform in our opinion, and it has been well received both by private and government sectors. So then comes another major important thrust, that is achieving more holistic education. First of all, why you should have a holistic education? How do you achieve this more holistic education? This is actually being projected to develop all the capacities of the human beings and to develop the student as a well-rounded individuals who possess critical 21st century capabilities, which is spread across arts, humanities, social sciences, technology, morals, values, ethos, everything together. You try to make a comprehensive, holistic educational opportunities for them depending upon their attitude and aptitude. Thus, if we can do this on a longer run, the approach of all undergraduate programs, including those in professional, technical, and vocational disciplines, will have this kind of a holistic educational approach. To suit this, the assessment of educational approaches in the undergraduate education, which integrates humanities and arts with science, technology, environment, and medicine, have always shown positive learning outcomes. It is not only learning outcome, but also creativity and innovation, providing the students higher order thinking capacities and problem solving abilities, and to have a teamwork kind of a temperament with a kind of a mastery in the curricula of the fields and increasing social and moral awareness. So this is what will be offered through the holistic educational approach. By doing that, research also will be improved, which will get enhanced through the holistic educational approach. So these are the themes based upon which this program is being offered. What are the kind of approaches here in the holistic and multidisciplinary education, wherein absolute flexibility is given to the students, and there will be a multiple entry and multiple exit of the students when he or she enters an undergraduate program or a postgraduate program, wherein an undergraduate program can be for 3 years or 4 years. Even in 3 years or 4 years, they may leave after 1 year or the second year or the third year, but not empty-handed, but with a certificate qualification or a diploma qualification or a PG diploma or a degree program, and then come back at their time, selected time, to complete the program as well. So this is the kind of a multiple entry exit option that has been facilitated. Same way, PG program will be for 1 or 2 years. I will explain how this is operational, and you will also have an integrated 5 years bachelor master's program. One thing that has made out categorically is that the MPhil program has been discontinued. We all felt that the MPhil program intermittently has been suffering, and hence now it has been removed. So you rightly asked by our Vice Chancellor, how are we going to make it possible? Such a complex kind of a reform. And that is going to be implemented through a system of regulation permitted credit transfer across the country and facilitated by Academic Bank of Credits, which is called as ABC. What is this academic bank? All of us have got financial accounts in various commercial banks or the authorized banks for our financial accounts. Whereas for our academic accounts, the country is developing a bank called Academic Bank of Credits, where whatever the student is able to gain through undergoing any kind of program, it can be a full program, it can be a course, or it can be a practice session, or it can be an internship which has got some stipulated credits that can be deposited through opening up a bank account, academic bank account in this, and that will be translatable of the future developments. We will go into the details of them. Now, if you have to really show to the national community of stakeholders, there has to be some models. How do this particular university system will operate? For that purpose, the Government of India is going to establish model multidisciplinary education and research universities, which will incorporate all these kind of reforms into them, and they are called as Meru. And it is proposed that at least one per every district, such a university will be established, and all the other universities can model themselves upon this particular kind of a concept. So what is Academic Bank of Credit? This Academic Bank of Credit provides absolute autonomy to the students by providing full choice for selecting courses for a program of study, flexibility of curriculum, and engaging course options across any number of higher education institutions in the country. Even though they originate from a parent institution, they will be permitted, or they will have an option of going to any part of the country. Whether from Chennai, they can go to Delhi universities, any one of them, or any other universities in the west or east, and that can be credited in their academic bank through a process called credit transfer. All of us are aware, because of the UGC regulation on choice-based credit system, we know about the credit weightages which will be adopted here for interoperability between the institutions, and that will make it easier. How do you operationalize this Academic Bank of Credit? There is a national effort through UGC to develop a UGC regulation in which I am also a member of this regulation along with 7 other members and experts, including Dr. Pankaj Mittal and others. And we have already prepared a draft of this regulation. Some aspects of it only I am now presenting it to you. So this regulation will give the overall dimensions of the academic bank of credits. And this will provide as a channel for students to choose their own academic path, either to attain a degree or a diploma or a postgraduate diploma, working on the principle of, as I told you, multiple entry and multiple exit, as well as anytime learning, anywhere learning, and any level of learning. So this kind of a flexibility model we are going to see. In fact, in the Western world, these kind of options are already there. People are able to go in and do some other course and get back to the parent course and so on. And the conceptually, this is being brought in with a kind of a structured fashion so that the student community benefit at large. So to define academic bank of credit, it is an academic service provider as a digital virtual online entity established and managed by Ministry of HRD. Now it is called as Ministry of Education and University Grants Commission, to facilitate all students of the specified higher education institutions to become its academic account holder, to allow distributed learning systems by creating a seamless student mobility within inter and intra-university system through a formal system of credit recognition, credit accumulation, credit transfer, and credit redemption. So that the entire process will be overall managed by the academic bank of credit, while it is not going to award the degrees. It is only the parent universities which will be awarding the degree. It is a facilitating body to account the academic credits, to accumulate them, to transfer them to the parent institution, and also to redeem the credits for the students as and when they need. And I will also just take you through how it is a student-centric approach and a learner-friendly approach, because the students will be enabled to select the best of the courses or combination of the courses to suit their aptitude and knowledge thirsts. Some student, an art student, may like to look into a kind of artificial intelligence course, or a medical anatomy student may like to get into a kind of a commerce related program, and vice versa. So all these are made possible. It depends upon the aptitude of the students, and at the same time, the students in this technology savvy world, they know which institution has, and because of the various kind of rankings and accreditations and others that are there, they will be able to select the best of the departments or the institutions, and they will be able to choose the phase in which they can work, and thus they will be tailoring their degrees by themselves with whatever modification they would like to do. Only thing is, it will be subjected to the UGC specified total credit requirement for an undergraduate program or a postgraduate program, and that is where the multiple entry and multiple exit scheme gets operated. So this is a distributed manner of working across campuses, universities, and autonomous colleges. And finally, it will be facilitating lifelong learning to the individual concerned, and it will also satisfy the quest for knowledge of the students, and also it will be a building block of their future dreams, so that they become a dutiful citizens of this particular country. Now, however, what are the functions of this? Which are the higher education institutions which may become eligible for operating this ABC scheme? Higher education institutions which are accredited by NAAC at A grade level are alone eligible to come under this particular ABC scheme. They will be registered under the ABC scheme, and the ABC, that is Academic Bank of Credit, will accept credits awarded by approved higher education institutions, their courses or programs across the country. And as I have already told you, the credits are as per the UGC guidelines for the choice-based credit system, where we know that 1 hour of theory or 1 hour of tutorial or 2 hours of practicals or 2 hours of laboratory work or internship or other things will, for 15 long weeks, will be actually taken in for awarding the credits. So this kind of interoperability between the institution should adhere to this definition of credits as given by UGC. As I have already told you, the major functions of this ABC are credit verification, whether the credit that is acquired and deposited by the student is really from an authorized institution and it is adhering to the norms of the UGC. And then it will preserve an account record of the credits that are getting accumulated. And whenever it is required, through a request from the student and the parent institution, this can be transferred to the institution or redeemed. And the degree that is obtained also will be authenticated by this ABC. And finally, it may be opening an account or closing an account or validating the academic accounts of the student. The name of the student and the account of the students will be maintained because learning at their own pace is there for a duration of 8 years generally, and it will depend upon the period of periodicity based upon the curriculum revisions and so on. The courses that are undergone by students through the national schemes like SWAYAM, NPTEL, etc., will also be included in the credit transfer. So when doing so, we need to have a kind of a monitoring and quality assurance also. So this will be done by means of proper training for teachers, staff, mentoring activities, also academic and administrative audit for other measures, so that the quality performance of it is done, and it is also taken care of by faculty development programs, quality improvement programs, professional development, technology inculcation, etc., wherein ABC will also be a partner in offering this particular program. Quality assurance of the implementation of this in university and autonomous colleges shall be one of the functions of the internal quality assurance cell, and that will be uploaded in the website of the annual reports of the ABC scheme in the website of the institutions. So going to the next chapter, that is what I have just completed, the Academic Bank of Credit. And the 12th chapter is talking on optimal learning environment and support for the students. See, the support for the student is being given a lot of importance here, both financial and academic, and also students' participation in the decision-making bodies. One important thing that has been introduced in this institutional management is the institutional development plan that is to be developed and monitored by Board of Governors. A new entity called Board of Governors has been introduced both for the universities as well as for the autonomous colleges, and they are the supreme bodies as far the institution is concerned, who will have every power also to monitor the performance of the institution through the institutional development plan, which is supposed to be prepared by an empowered expert committee under the institution, and that will go through the system of development that is taking place. These bodies will also have student participation in them so that their feedback will be useful for the progress of the institution. So after having said that, what is important is in this particular process, the faculty and institutional autonomy is one thing that is authenticated. Curriculum revampment, pedagogy modernization, assessment modernization, and student support procedures will be fully given support to. And then the professional, academic and career counseling will be there, and the student support will be through a national scholarship portal, which is currently available, will be fully expanded so that no deserving student is left out without a scholarship in the country. That is what is being said, as the socially and economically backward students, all of them from all parts of the country, will have a national scholarship. And then faculty and institutional leadership positions will be to men of integrity and capability. And there is also a transparent process and criteria for faculty recruitment and tenure track appointments, and an incentivizing system for excellent faculty will also be incorporated into the system. Besides incorporating modernization and so on, one of the important entity that has been added up is the internationalization of higher education, wherein by legislative framework, foreign universities will be permitted to enter into India upon collaboration with an Indian institution or independently, and Indian institutions which have shown excellence will also be allowed to set up their campuses abroad. All this will be weighed as against the ranking that they have got. If they are foreign universities coming into India, they must be within the top 100 ranks, world university rank. If Indian higher education institutions have to go, they must be within the 100 NIRF rank. So this is the kind of benchmarks that has been put in, which are global in nature. So thus I would only like to tell you one important part in the other aspects of internationalization and also making high quality higher education institutions. So now integration of vocational, teacher and professional education is one aspect which is also being talked about. That is where it comes as standalone higher education and professional educations, may it be agricultural, legal, healthcare, technical institution, will have to evolve into multidisciplinary higher educations gradually. That is what has been very clearly put in, and this needs to be worked out. We are sure that there will be a lot of teething difficulties will be there, and it has to be worked out in an objective manner so that a medical student will also be able to learn some aspects of the other arts and humanities and social sciences as well. In fact, it is a point to be appreciated that the Medical Council of India in this year batch of MBBS curriculum has introduced elective options, and that elective options have to be judiciously utilized so that the concept of multidisciplinarity is also being brought in to medical or health sciences and others. So the national institutes for other languages will be there, and educational technology forum will also be there, which needs to be looked into. Then teacher education is also being talked about, even though majority of it involves a school education. What is important here that is mentioned is that the teacher education will gradually be moved into the multidisciplinary colleges and universities. There can be a B.Ed course if it is a straightforward course. Those who are already having a bachelor degree, they will go through a 2-year BEd so that they become eligible. And then those who have completed the equivalent of 4-year multidisciplinary bachelor's degree, if they do a 1-year program, they will get the B.Ed degree. And here again, the flexibility component has come in. Two more important component of improving teacher education is that a new and comprehensive national curriculum framework on teacher education will be evolved and implemented from 2021. This is an immediate target that has been put in, and stringent action against substandard standalone teacher education institution will also be another important yardstick that has been put in, and setting up of national mission for mentoring with a large pool of outstanding senior and retired faculty as mentors for the teacher education institutions will be another reform that is being put in there. So after having passed through these chapters, now comes promoting higher quality research through National Research Foundation. Here it states that research in arts and humanities, along with innovations in science, technology, and social sciences, are necessary for economic, intellectual, environmental, societal, and other related progress of the country, and for which there is an important need that there has to be a greater investment in research. And so the coordinated effort of all institutions to place India high in the global knowledge production. So for which a specified grant has also been provided for, and that will be through the National Research Foundation or NIRF, which is supposed to bring in a quantum jump in the funding and the quality and financial support for research in our country. So what will be the activity of the National Research Foundation, which is supposed to be provided annually with 20,000 crores? Actually, that is what it is projected, and we will have to see whether we are going to be the beneficiaries. More especially, it is stated that funding will be competitive, peer-reviewed grant proposals without any differentiation of private and public higher education institutions. That is one important thing. And secondly, the activities of this NRF will be to seed, grow, and facilitate research at academic institutions, particularly that is in universities and colleges. And it will also act as a liaison between researchers and relevant branches of government, industry. It will bring in industry together so that breakthroughs that are coming up from the universities are taken over by the industry, facilitated by the government in an optimal way. While doing so, it will also recognize outstanding research and the project as achieved through prizes, special seminars, and other kind of things. The next, one more thing is bringing in the academies. We do have big academies of national science academies and engineering academies and learner societies, and they will be inducted in to develop some expert reports for directing the government efforts, as well as they will be helpful in capacity building the teachers in various parts of the country in promoting not only teaching quality, but also research with special reference to state universities. Now comes how technology synergy is going to take place. Technology synergy is going to be facilitated by the National Educational Technology Forum. And this will be used in education planning, teaching, learning and assessment, administration and management of the higher education institutions, and also in the regulatory framework, which will rely upon self-disclosure with minimum human interface, removing off completely the inspection-related requirements. So these are the kind of things. And then there will also be facilities for creating e-content in regional languages. And the online digital education will be facilitated through various platforms. We already have the Diksha platform as one nation, one digital platform that will be strengthened. And the Swayam portal will also be facilitated much more. And it is not that everything will become online and digital. There will always be a stress and emphasis for blended learning so that technology synergy with face-to-face education is able to take place. Finally, it is important to see how effectively the governance and leadership in the higher education institutions are going to work. I have told you about the independent board of governors, which is going to help the graded autonomy that is given to the higher education institutions and the colleges are made as autonomous degree awarding colleges. So they will develop the institutional development plans or IDP, upon which the BOG will have a control. It is even stated that the BOG of a university will be empowered even to select a vice chancellor, and that is where the legal provisions are going to be given. That is what is being given. It is mentioned there. So all that is going to be made possible by public-private partnerships, common norms to both private sector and for the public sector, and everything will be made possible by public investment in education sector to reach 6% of the GDP at the earliest, and it is also typically written that it will reach 20% of all public expenditure over 10 years period. That is what is the financial support that has been projected. So after having heard that, in all our mind, we will develop only a kind of a feeling that is it going to be easy to implement? See, policy documents are prepared very well. Every time we get an excellent policy document, and then you have also a detailed project report, a planning document, and then strategies are deployed. Schemes implementation will also take place. When it comes to quality monitoring, quality sustenance, quality enhancement, and looking at the outcomes and output, there can be difficulties, and hence the policy implementation cycle has to be judiciously taken up. And this component is also addressed in this National Education Commission. How it is being done by amalgamating the regulatory bodies. There will be a Higher Education Commission of India, which is the overarching umbrella body. It will have 4 verticals. One is National Higher Education Regulation Authority, regulatory authority, which will look into the type of regulations which will be light, but at the same time tight. And you will have the accreditation processes being brought under the National Accreditation Authority, which will subsume the NAC, National Assessment and Accreditation Council, as well as the NBA, National Board of Accreditation. And there is scope for new entities also to be permitted through this particular NAA. Then you have a General Education Council, which will look into the standards of education. Any kind of education will be looked into by the GEC, wherein the National Higher Education Quality Framework will be developed for various areas of disciplines, including the multidisciplinary education. And also National Skill Qualification Framework will also be developed, and under whom the professional standard setting bodies will be there. This is where it is proposed that all the professional education will come under, whether it is National Council for Teacher Education or technical AICTE, or including medical, legal, agricultural. They are expected to be as profession standard setting bodies, which will come under the GEC. Then there will be a Higher Education Grants Commission separately, which will look into the funding and financing of the higher education institution. And the funding and financing will be an outcome-based kind of a parametric approach, wherein the outcomes will be assessed as against the institutional development plan that has been proposed by the higher education institution through the Board of Governors, empowered expert committees, and so on. So there is a well integrated kind of a system that has been proposed, which if it works very well, it is sure that it may be able to bring about the desired outcome. Overall, all the bodies which are being constituted will be overall managed by the Rakshya Shiksha Ayog or RSA, which is in the place of the Central Advisory Board on Education, which is currently there. It will be replaced and RSA will come in. The chairman of this RSA will be the Minister of Education, Government of India. 30-member body, of which 2/3 of the members will be eminent experts, and besides them, union ministers, representatives of the state government, Niti Aayog, secretaries of the Ministry of Education and others will be there. And there will be a permanent secretariat called Permanent Secretariat of RSA, PSRSA, which will be headed by an executive director with a 5-year tenure and a committee of experts and educationists to guide that particular operational mechanism. While this is going to be at the central level, there will be a body at the state level in each state called Rajya Shiksha Ayog in each state, where the chairman will be the state education minister and the members are ministers of the stakeholder departments, eminent educationists, professionals, a representative from the main RSA, from the central body, and the secretaries of the Department of Education and the others. So these are the well-oiled structure that has been developed, and they have also highlighted what could be the approach for the implementation system and synergy. So the implementation requires multiple actions to be taken by multiple bodies at center and states. The policy realizes that these are to be partners in the implementation methodology itself, including the schools and the higher education institutions. What is important is the spirit and intent of the policy to be taken in while implementing it, and the policy plans are to be implemented in a phased way, at the same time in an integrated way, giving priority for sequencing them. Because if only that is done, then comprehensiveness in implementation of the policy will take place. If you are just going to take small components of each of the sections and start doing it, then none of the sections will be completed fully. The comprehensiveness of implementation may not be achieved, and so integrative kind of implementation is also proposed. The most important point the policy realizes is education is a concurrent subject. Careful planning, joint monitoring, and collaborating implementation between center and states are very, very essential in terms of timely infusion of resources, human infusion, infrastructural infusion, and financial infusions are required, and it has to be monitored, carefully analyzed, and reviews are to be taken at varying points of time so that the implementation steps are fully validated and progressive manner is being authenticated. So let me tell you at the end, to conclude with the address of our Honorable Prime Minister in the UGC National Conclave that took place on the 7th August 2020, organized by the University Grants Commission. Everyone is raising the problem of implementation. He has really addressed it very effectively if we can understand the spirit behind it. I quote, "A new world order and global standard is emerging. To sync our changes with that is also important. While we have to make our students global citizens, we also need to ensure they stay connected with their roots." And that is the underlying principle of the entire document. Coming to implementation, he states, I quote, "All eyes are now on implementation and there are challenges. Systemic changes will be made wherever necessary. We have to do this together and we have to do it. You are all directly involved with the implementation of the national education policy, and therefore your role is crucial. Every component of the higher education system, may it be students, may it be higher education institutions or the institutional planners, all of us and the governments, they have to be part of this. But he says, I am fully committed and with you. So hope that with this kind of a commitment, we are able to take it forward successfully. Let me just tell you the age-old kind of a storytelling educational system. If it's a simple story, most of us will know. Unless and until we join together, some intruder will come and take away. So what is important is teamwork. If we join together as a team, we will be able to be successful. We will be able to harvest what is needed for the country, and so that the world order becomes global in nature, and we are able to set global standards, and our students become global citizens. Thank you all very much.